So let's go back in time, right? So if you go back many years, you did not have anything online. Everything was nothing was online. Everything was on-prem. So if you wanted to communicate from one computer to another computer, you needed to know the IP address. So if Abhishek were to log in over here and were to communicate with any other computer over here, you need to know the IP address of the computer. Same way, if you want to share a file or something like that, you need to know the IP address of the computer so that you can create a shared location, and then the other computers can access that location. Yeah.
Sure.
Now, it so happens that Abhishek wants to log in with the same username and password into all these computers, but that was not possible at that time, right? At that time, you had to create one profile on each one of these computers. And if you wanted something similar, like if you wanted something easy to remember, then you could have the same type of username and password on each one of those computers. But they were all separate profiles. Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
this was an issue for a lot of people because in a small environment like three, it is fine, it's easy. But if you upscale, it's not a scalable model. So if you upscale to maybe even 50 computers or even 50,000 or 10,000 or even 100,000 computers, it's hard to create profiles on all those computers and move between them, right? So this was not scalable and this is not feasible for large organizations. So Microsoft came up with something different. They came up with Active Directory. It's a service provided by an operating system, which uh, by which you can have the same username and password on all the computers that are joined to it. So with that comes the question is, what is a server? Do any one of y'all know what a server is?
Yeah, a server is basically a network of multiple storage devices or computers wherein you have a lot of uh, data that can be stored. But
No,
uh,
no, that's
mhm.
not a server.
It's a mediator between client or user or
No, no, that's not a server either. So a server is it's a computer that provides services to other computers, right? So any
okay.
computer that can provide services to other computers is called a server. As your regular machine itself, it just has maybe better specifications, better specs like more RAM, a different like a high performance stuff on a server. The operating system on a server is different, and just like your regular computer, which cannot really provide too many services to anything, a server is built with or gets installed with an operating system that can provide services to other systems. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
this particular server, let's say the Windows server, right? If you want to enable Active Directory and stuff, it's a Windows server. You install your server OS over here. This is your operating system, server OS. You install this. Once that is installed, you have to enable the feature on this machine. If I go over here, this is my virtual machine. And if I go to Server Manager, right, this is this is the server OS on this virtual machine. So since I have this, I can go ahead and add and remove roles and features, right?
Okay.
So
Mhm.
now currently this server does not do anything. I have not made this as a domain controller. I don't want it to do anything. Right now it is just a server. All right. But
Yeah.
if I want to do something with it, then I'll have to install some roles and or services. So let's have a look at maybe some of these roles over here. So you have ADCS, ADDS, ADFS, AD and your rights management. These are the FISMO roles of Active Directory. All right. So if you go to an interview and they ask you about the FSMO roles or FISMO roles, these are the roles. These are some of the services that this server can provide. All right. So if I want to enable that Active Directory feature where you can have a where you can use one username and password on different computers, it is this Active Directory domain services. Over here, it would allow you to create your users and things like that. Now,
Mhm.
once this is promoted or this is enabled, you'll have to restart and everything. Once this is enabled, then your computer would have to be added to this domain because it's a domain that's created. Yeah. So all these computers, the first time they log in, need to be added to this domain. Currently, when
Mhm.
you're home, you have it all in a work group, right?
Mhm.
So you have it in a work group. So maybe your computer, your sisters, your moms, all these computers are connected in a work group. You all can share a printer, you all can share a fax machine, you all can share maybe what else is there? Printer, scanner, things like that, right? Because it's in a work group, you can share all these things with your other computers that are at home. All right.
Yeah.
Now, for home, it is work groups are fine. For larger environments, it is added to an Active Directory. So because of Active Directory, you can, in a large company, you can go to maybe any floor in the organization and log in with your username and password because you're added to Active Directory. All right.
Yeah.
Now, Active Directory is represented with this symbol, which is usually represented with this triangular symbol, which is Active Directory on-prem. Now,
Okay.
Active Directory has multiple objects on it, one being users. Then you have your users, you have groups, you would have computer objects, many other objects on your Active Directory, right? Now, everything is good when it is on-prem and you're restricted to your environment, stuff like that. You want to move to different maybe to different locations, right? Let's say you are in Bangalore, I'm in Bombay, different ones. There are multiple domain controllers and stuff that are set up,
Okay.
and you can then connect to different locations as well, right? And you can set up a replication time as well. For example, I'm in Bombay, you're in Bangalore. Let's say you're the main hub, right? So whenever I log in over here, any changes that happen on my computer, which is let's say in Bombay, you're in Bangalore. So any changes that happen on my computer, maybe they have set up a replication time of once a day, and then during non-business hours. So once a day, all the details for my machine will replicate to an Active Directory, and then you'll be able so that I can log in using the same credentials and stuff in a different machine, in a different location. Now, say it is set up to replicate once a day, right? I change my password in Bombay in the morning. I go to Bangalore. I will not be able to log in Bangalore until that replication happens. All right.
Yeah.
So that's all good when it's on-prem and you're not really in this training session to understand on-prem really, right?
Mhm.
So it is all about online. So when we take these services that we have online, it becomes Azure Active Directory. Here is Active Directory and Azure. It's actually a diamond, but I'll just make a cloud. All right, this becomes AAD. So this directory service, which is on premises, is it's the same type of thing but online. And Microsoft is good in that way is they have a sync engine, which is AAD Connect. AAD Connect is responsible for syncing users or user objects from on-premises to online, so that you can have a nice little hybrid kind of an interface or environment. Now this is Active Directory. The thing about Active Directory or the good thing about Active Directory is it has a schema, which is if it's a user, you'll have a first name, a given name, last name, let's say first name, last name, all these multiple objects that you have, right, on your user accounts, correct? So
Yeah.
that's known as schema. So Active Directory has schema and schema is extendable. So let's say in your on-premises environment, you add Exchange, you add an Exchange server, right? Exchange server has there some of its own attributes like mail, nickname, height from addresses, things like that, right? So since Active Directory is extendable and the schema is extendable, these attributes from Exchange get added to the Active Directory schema. right?
Yeah.
Say next day you decide to add SharePoint, right? You have a SharePoint farm. You can you have some other SharePoint attributes as well. I think it is the picture profile or something like that. So you can add all these to Active Directory. And the last one, let's say Teams. Awesome, we got all the colors as well.
Yeah.
The Teams has your SIP address, or at least Skype for Business has SIP address. So all these are extendable, so it gets added to Active Directory. These objects will get replicated to online. Now, if I were to take this entire environment and move this online, this one would Active Directory would become Azure Active Directory. SharePoint becomes SharePoint Online, one of the services in Office 365. Then Exchange becomes Exchange Online, and Teams becomes your Microsoft Teams Online. Yep. So these are all the services provided by Microsoft Online. Your goal here is to understand Azure. One part of Azure is Active Directory. You can think of Active Directory as the backbone of, no, sorry, not the backbone, the nervous system of Azure. So whenever you
Got it.
provision a tenant, there is always an Azure Active Directory that's provisioned in the backend. Now, what you can do is go through that video that I sent you earlier. Yeah. Once you go
Mhm.
through the video, there's a link in that video which will give you a free subscription. And this is not the 30-day free subscription. It'll give you one for 90 days. There will be a lot of demo environments as well so that you don't have to create those 25 users. You can just auto license them with 25 E5 licenses. It, it can automatically create your password. So your environments are already created, right? And you can use that for 90 days. If you talk to our tech guy and get your MNP subscription, you can add that to, you can associate that MNP subscription with that tenant you get as well, right?
Yeah.
So your next step would be to go through that link, sign up or set up your tenant, then talk to our IT guy, get your MNP Azure subscription. And next time we'll talk about your next assignment at least is to move that subscription from one tenant to another, right? So I'll draw some things over here. We have, let's say this is the 90-day test tenant that you signed up for. All right. And Rapid Circle is blue. So this is Rapid Circle's tenant. All right.
Okay.
Now Rapid Circle will have its own Azure Active Directory. Although you get an Azure license, right? Although you get an Azure subscription, you cannot do anything in this Active Directory because this doesn't belong to you. All you have is the subscription. This doesn't belong to you, so you will not be able to create any users.
Mhm.
Now, this particular tenant has or comes with an Azure Active Directory because every time you purchase or even provision a free tenant, you get an Azure Active Direct or an Azure Active Directory provisioned in the backend. All right. So your next assignment is to provision this tenant using the link that I gave you and take this subscription that you have, which will be provided to you by our IT guys, and move it to this tenant or associate it with this tenant. Once you associate it with this tenant, you will be able to use this subscription and create stuff in this tenant. User accounts, so definitely you'll be able to create. Yep. You can go ahead and you can get your virtual machines if you want. You can create functions. You can really mess around with this tenant. And this is your playground, all right? So before you learn, you need the tools.
Mhm.
These are your tools, all right? This is your playground and this is where you will learn stuff, all right? So now that we understood what on-prem is and what, at least not, we got a brief idea of what on-prem is and what online is. Now you know what Azure is, and now you actually know what you want to learn, right?
Correct.
So now we have the base setup. The first step is you have your create this. You'll get an Active Directory created. Then we'll go through some of the Active Directory stuff or Azure Active Directory stuff, right? What are users, what are groups, what are different types of groups, what are the other cool things that you can do in. We will just focus on, it's easy. We will just focus on this part here right now, right? Because this is the main service or the backbone or even the nervous system of Azure. Without this, you don't have any objects in Azure. Yep. At least for y'all, you cannot play around with this. We'll talk about different type of accounts that you can create. We can talk about your B2B accounts, B2C accounts, your guest accounts, your member accounts, many different types. We'll talk about SPN, service principal. So we'll cover some stuff in Azure. After we cover Azure, we'll talk about the different things we can do in Azure. Maybe if y'all are interested in virtual machines, which are not that great really, but yeah, we can get into virtual machines. We can spend like 10 minutes talking about virtual machines. We'll talk about all the policies that can be set up, conditional access policies, things like that, which you can set up. Yep. Now, do you all have any questions about what we talked about today, which is basically on-prem and online, AD and AAD? Hello, I cannot hear you all if you're
Yeah.
speaking.
No, got it.
Got it. So one thing would be your MNP subscription. This is Azure subscription. The next one would be a tenant. And next one is move subscription. So you will move your subscription from rather Rapid Circle tenant to this tenant. Yep.
Okay.
Let's have these three things done by next week, and then we can look at the other some of the other features of Azure. All right.
Sure.
Okay,
So
then. Cheers. You have a good day.
thank you so much.